Not every mistake comes from ignorance. Some come from arrogance, wrapped in authority. But what happens when the person you misjudge holds more power than you think? Let us know in the comments section below before we dive into this unforgettable story. She held her phone like it was a shield, fingers tapping the screen harder than necessary as the check-in line crawled forward. Josephine Caprice had been patient for the past 15 minutes. The woman behind the counter had smiled at every guest ahead of her, smiled at the two girls in designer gym sets, smiled at the couple who argued over credit cards, smiled even at the man who dropped his ID twice and laughed like he was drunk at noon. But when Josephine stepped up, that smile dropped, like it owed her something. "Can I help you?" The woman's voice didn't carry the same customer service warmth she'd used with the others. Her name tag read Melinda, and she stared at Josephine the way mall security stares at teenagers who walk in without shopping bags. "Yes," Josephine said, keeping her tone even. "I have a reservation under Caprice. Josephine Caprice." Melinda didn't move. Her lips parted like she was holding something in, then reluctantly her hands moved to the keyboard. Click, click, click. Long pause. "I don't see anything under that name," Melinda finally said, eyes not leaving the screen. Josephine took a breath, not her first time being doubted. "Try again, please. It was booked last week, Friday through Sunday. Deluxe room. I got the confirmation email. Would you like to see it?" Melinda hesitated, then gave a tight nod. Josephine slid her phone across the counter. Melinda barely glanced at it before typing again, this time with visible irritation. Behind Josephine, the line was building. "There it is," Melinda muttered. Josephine smiled. "Told you." But Melinda didn't smile back. She leaned over, whispering to the man beside her. He wore a navy vest and a face that screamed assistant manager. The two of them exchanged looks before Melinda turned back. "We're gonna need a credit card and photo ID." "Sure," Josephine said, already reaching into her wallet. Her hands weren't shaking, but her stomach was starting to churn. Something was off, something she'd felt too many times in rooms like this. Melinda eyed the ID longer than necessary. "Is this your real name?" Josephine blinked. "Excuse me?" "You just don't look like a Caprice." Josephine's jaw clenched. "It's my name." More whispers between the staff. Then the assistant manager stepped forward. "Miss Caprice," he said, voice polite but distant. "We're going to need to run a quick verification check before we can process your reservation." "What kind of check?" Josephine asked, heart now ticking faster. "I already paid the deposit." "It's just a policy thing, standard. You understand." No, she didn't. "I've stayed at hotels alone before," she said, her voice rising just enough to draw attention. "No one's ever said that to me." The couple behind her shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am," Melinda cut in, this time louder, "we're asking you to step aside while we verify your information. If you can't comply, I'll have to ask you to leave." Josephine stared. "Are you serious?" The assistant manager nodded. "Please step to the side." There were 3 people behind her now, watching, whispering. Josephine didn't move. "My mother booked this hotel for me," she said quietly. "She comes here all the time." "I'm sure she does," Melinda said, dripping with condescension. "But this is your reservation, and until we confirm you're actually who you say you are." Josephine's eyes narrowed. She grabbed her phone again and dialed. 2 rings. Then a voice, firm and clear. "Hello, this is Agnes Caprice." Josephine held the phone out like a grenade. "My mom would like a word." Melinda raised an eyebrow. "Is that supposed to scare me?" Josephine smiled, but it was the cold kind. "It should." But Melinda didn't take the phone. She crossed her arms. "I'm not speaking to someone over speakerphone. You need to wait." Then a sharp voice came from the lobby's side entrance, heels clicking, presence cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Is there a problem here?" The woman who spoke wasn't tall, but she carried herself like skyscrapers. Sleek black suit, hair pulled tight, eyes scanning every inch of the front desk like she owned it. Because she did. Josephine didn't turn. She just exhaled and said, "Hi, Mom." Melinda's smile returned, but this time it was panic-painted. "Oh, Miss Caprice," she gasped, stepping around the desk. "We didn't know you were—" "Clearly," Agnes said, voice flat. She walked past Melinda like she was furniture, stopping next to her daughter. "What happened?" she asked Josephine, already knowing the answer. Josephine held out her hands. "Apparently, I don't look like a Caprice." Agnes's jaw didn't move, but something shifted behind her eyes. She turned to Melinda. "You'll bring my daughter's room key, now." Melinda's lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked to the assistant manager, who had suddenly become fascinated by the floor. "I didn't know." "Exactly," Agnes said. "You didn't ask, you assumed." The silence that followed was loud. The guests in line? Dead quiet. The man with the navy vest? Gone, like smoke. Agnes took Josephine's hand. "Come, baby. Let's get you to your suite." "Suite?" Josephine raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. As they walked away, a bellhop appeared, faster than anyone thought possible, carrying Josephine's single duffel like it was Louis Vuitton. When the elevator doors closed behind them, Josephine leaned against the mirrored wall. That was something. Agnes didn't smile. That was nothing. Josephine looked at her mother, and for a second forgot how exhausted she felt. But the knot in her stomach hadn't gone away, because she knew that wasn't the end. Not yet. Not even close. And back downstairs, Melinda stood frozen, hands shaking just enough to spill coffee down the front of her cream blouse. The suite smelled like money. Not just the overpriced floral spray kind of money, but the kind that lingered in the velvet of the curtains and whispered from the marbled countertops. Josephine Caprice stood still for a moment, letting it all settle. Her breath, her thoughts, her pulse that hadn't slowed down since the front desk drama. Agnes was already halfway through the room, inspecting the minibar like she hadn't just walked in and made 3 employees nearly cry. "You okay?" she asked without looking up. Josephine shrugged. "Yeah, don't lie to me." "I'm fine, Mom." Agnes turned, arms crossed, scanning her daughter's face like she could read emotions better than any therapist. Maybe she could. She'd raised Josephine alone, and in rooms like this, in worlds like these, that wasn't just impressive, it was rare. Agnes said nothing. Instead, she sat on the edge of the tufted chase and patted the cushion beside her. Josephine flopped down, legs crossed underneath her. "You didn't have to come all the way here," Josephine said after a moment. Agnes smiled softly. "You think I was going to let them disrespect my daughter like that, and not say something?" Josephine looked down. "They didn't know who I was. That's the problem." There it was. The truth, quiet but sharp. "I just wanted a weekend to study and unwind before finals," Josephine muttered. "Not be treated like a thief in designer sneakers." Agnes leaned over, brushing a coil of hair out of her daughter's face. "Baby, they'll always find a way to make us prove something." Josephine knew. She'd lived it since she was 12 and came out as gay at school, only to find herself both hyper-visible and completely unseen. Black, queer, and female. She'd gotten used to the triple checks, the side eyes, the long stares from people who couldn't figure her out and didn't want to try. "You know what's wild?" Josephine said, sitting up straighter. "I didn't even get mad at first. I just expected it." Agnes nodded slowly. "That's not your fault." "I don't want to be the person who shrugs it off, though." "I don't want to be numb." "Then don't be. You hold them accountable, Joe." There was a knock at the door. Agnes stood. "That'll be the key card." But it wasn't just that. It was Melinda. No navy vest. No assistant manager. Just her. Her name tag was gone, and she held the key card like it was a confession. "I'm here to deliver your daughter's room key," she said, voice too thin, too careful. Agnes didn't take it right away. Instead, she watched her, head tilted. Josephine stood up behind her mom, arms folded. Melinda glanced between them and extended the card a little farther. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry." Josephine raised an eyebrow. "Sorry for what?" Melinda flinched. I made assumptions. I shouldn't have questioned your name or your idea." "You didn't question the man before me," Josephine said. "He was slurring and couldn't remember his zip code. You just gave him a key and smiled." Melinda said nothing. "I'm used to this," Josephine added, "but that doesn't make it okay." Melinda nodded, her throat working to find words that wouldn't come. "I know. I'll do better." Agnes stepped forward then, took the key card from Melinda's hand slowly. "I hope so," she said, "because next time I won't be so polite." Melinda nodded again, like the only thing she could do now was shrink. As the door closed behind her, Josephine let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "You think she meant that?" she asked. Agnes shrugged. "Doesn't matter. She heard you. That's the first step." Josephine looked at the card in her mom's hand. "You really booked me a suite?" Agnes gave her a look. "You're not sleeping in anything less than what you deserve." Josephine laughed. "Well, the snacks better be good then. Room service is on me." That night they sat cross-legged on the floor, eating overpriced sliders and watching bad reality TV. It was the first time Josephine had smiled all day. Not just polite, not just reflex, but a real one that showed her back teeth. Later, when Agnes had left and the room fell quiet again, Josephine scrolled through her phone, flipping past news articles, group chats, and her camera roll. She landed on a photo from a rally she attended last fall. She was holding a sign that said, "We're still here." Her arm was around Camille, her ex-girlfriend. They'd broken up 2 months ago, but the picture still made Josephine's chest ache with something complicated. Pride, grief, maybe both. She put her phone down and stared at the ceiling. Was she always going to have to fight for space in rooms like this? Was she always going to be the exception and never the norm? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Room service," a voice said from outside. Josephine frowned. "I didn't order anything." She opened the door slowly, half expecting another hotel employee with another apology. Instead, it was a young woman, early 20s, brown skin, tight curls under a hotel cap. Name tag read Serena. "Hi," she said with a small smile. "I just wanted to drop this off." She held out a small box. Inside, a note in fancy hotel stationery. Josephine unfolded it. "To Miss Caprice. On behalf of the hotel staff, we sincerely apologize for your experience earlier today. Your presence matters. We hope your stay becomes the restful escape you deserve. Please enjoy this complimentary dessert tray as a small gesture of goodwill." Josephine looked up, surprised. Serena shrugged. "They made me deliver it, but I saw what happened downstairs. Just wanted you to know, not all of us agree with how you were treated." Josephine smiled softly. "Thanks. If you need anything, my shift ends at 11. I'm usually in the break room, but I got snacks better than room service." Josephine chuckled. "You flirting with a guest?" Serena winked. "Only when they're cute." Josephine leaned against the doorframe, warmth sneaking up her cheeks. "Well, I guess I'll keep that in mind." "Cool," Serena said, backing away slowly. "Enjoy your tray." The door clicked shut and Josephine walked the box over to the bed. She opened it and found a tiny strawberry tart with edible gold on top. Fancy. But what made her smile wasn't the dessert, it was the post-it under it, scribbled in pen. "Let them get your name wrong. Just means they'll remember it." Josephine grinned. She whispered her own name to herself, just to feel it in the air. Josephine Caprice. Let them learn it. The next morning, Josephine woke up to a beam of sun crawling across her cheek. and the scent of freshly brewed coffee somewhere down the hall. The suite was quiet except for the low hum of the AC and the faint city noise pushing in through the thick hotel windows. She stretched, her body still heavy with the residue of yesterday's tension, but her mind sharp, annoyingly alert. She didn't have class, and no one was waiting on her, but she couldn't lie there, not with that energy still sitting in her chest. She grabbed her phone, tapped through a few unread messages. Her group chat with the LGBTQ Student Alliance at her college had blown up overnight. "Zoe, go. I saw the tweet. Is that you they're talking about? Jay, they/them. You better be raising hell and taking names. Mariana, Josephine Caprice, as in Agnes Capra's kid? Why am I just finding this out?" Josephine let her head fall back on the pillow. Her mom's name always made everything louder. People either treated her like she didn't belong, or like she was some princess from a magazine spread. Either way, it was never normal, never quiet. She replied with a single message. "Josephine, long story, but yeah, that was me." As soon as she hit send, the typing bubbles appeared like popcorn. She turned off the screen before she could get pulled into it. The truth was, she hadn't told many people. She didn't like how eyes changed when they learned who her mother was. Suddenly people wanted favors, or they backed away like she was some kind of ticking time bomb. Being black, queer, and the daughter of a powerful woman meant people always expected her to explain herself, who she loved, where she came from, and why she was taking up space. She took a quick shower, pulled her hair into a low puff, and threw on black cargo pants, a crop top, and her favorite rainbow enamel pin shaped like a clenched fist. She didn't need to perform queerness for anyone, but she also wasn't hiding, not today. By the time she stepped into the hotel lobby, the vibe had shifted. The concierge smiled way too brightly. The bellhop waved like they were old friends. Even the barista at the lobby cafe called out her name. "Josephine, first cortado of the day?" She blinked. Sure." The barista winked. "On the house." As she waited, she noticed guests glancing her way, some curious, some embarrassed. She didn't recognize most of them. Except one. Melinda. The same woman who had questioned her name, her ID, her everything, was now standing off to the side of the concierge desk, clipboard in hand, trying to blend into the wallpaper. Josephine held her gaze long enough to make the woman twitch, but instead of approaching her, Melinda turned and walked quickly into the back office. Josephine raised her eyebrow. That's what she thought. Her coffee came with a tiny heart drawn into the foam, and she made her way to the lounge by the fountain, settling into a deep chair by the window. She pulled out her laptop and tried to focus on the paper she needed to finish. Something about post-colonial identity and modern fiction. But her thoughts kept circling the night before. The apology, the dessert tray, Serena's smile. She hadn't stopped thinking about Serena's post-it note. "Let them get your name wrong. Just means they'll remember it." Before she could spiral into that again, someone cleared their throat. It was an older man, tall, suit too expensive for the time of day. He had a tablet in one hand and wore a crisp name tag that read, Harrison M. Wallace, General Manager. "Miss Caprice?" he asked. She looked up, cautious. "Yes? May I have a moment of your time?" She nodded, slowly closing her laptop. Harrison sat in the chair across from her, his posture upright but not stiff. "First, I want to offer my sincerest apologies on behalf of the hotel. What happened yesterday does not reflect the standards we hold ourselves to. At all." Josephine nodded politely. "That's not what Melinda said at the time." He sighed. "Yes, I've been made aware of her behavior. And the assistant manager," she added. "He was right there with her." "He's been suspended pending a formal investigation," Harrison said. "Melinda, too." Josephine blinked. "You're serious?" "Extremely. And there's more." He handed her a thick envelope. "This is a formal invitation from our executive board. We'd like to invite you and your mother to consult with us as we revise our employee training protocols. Bias, microaggressions, racial and identity sensitivity. We need help getting this right, and frankly, who better than you two? Josephine opened the envelope and saw a letter with the hotel's gold seal, along with 2 plane tickets and a week-long calendar of proposed meetings. She didn't respond right away. "I'm not here to save face," Harrison added. "We screwed up. Now we want to do better." Josephine narrowed her eyes slightly. "Is this just PR?" "No," he said, "but I can't blame you for wondering. We'll do this with you or without you, but we'd rather learn from the people we wrong than pretend to fix things behind closed doors." Josephine nodded slowly. "I'll talk to my mom." "Thank you," he said, rising to his feet. "And again, I'm sorry." After he walked off, Josephine sat there in silence, staring at the envelope. She wasn't sure how she felt about being pulled into a boardroom to teach people how not to be awful. She wasn't even 22 yet. She still mixed up her taxes, still cried during Pixar movies, still missed Camille sometimes. But she also knew what it meant to walk into a room and feel unwelcome because of her blackness, her queerness, or simply because her name didn't sound the way people expected it to. She took a deep breath and looked at her phone. A new text from an unknown number. "Serena. Heard you got the suite. Power move. Want to celebrate later?" Josephine grinned before she could stop herself. She typed back, "Josephine, only if there's dessert, and no judgment when I eat all of it." She hit send and sat back in her chair, the sunlight now pouring across her legs, warming the cold spots yesterday had left behind. Whatever came next, she'd be ready. Josephine stood in the mirror of the hotel suite, adjusting the buttons on her soft blue blazer. Her curls were still damp from the shower, coiled and carefree, and she had a small rainbow pin clipped at the lapel, the same one she wore yesterday. There was no official dress code for the meeting downstairs, but something about dressing up today felt right. Not because she needed to prove anything, but because she wanted to feel powerful in her own skin, fully herself. She took a final look at her reflection and whispered under her breath, "You're exactly where you're supposed to be." Downstairs, the hotel boardroom didn't look like a place built for change. It was all beige walls and polished wood, the kind of sterile comfort that made mistakes easy to hide. But today, it felt different. A whiteboard stood near the head of the table. On it, in bold letters, someone had written, "Rethinking Belonging." Josephine walked in beside her mother, Agnes Caprice, whose calm but commanding presence filled the room before she even spoke. A few heads turned. Some people stood. One executive, an older woman in a silk scarf, offered a nervous smile and gestured to the seat at the end of the table. "Please," she said, "we're so honored to have you here." Josephine nodded politely but said nothing as she took her seat. Agnes sat beside her, arms crossed lightly, waiting. The meeting began with the usual acknowledgments, apologies, corporate phrases that sounded rehearsed but were probably written by someone who meant them. Josephine listened with a stillness that made people fidget. When the floor was open for input, her voice was the first to fill the space. "I'm not here to check a box for you," she said plainly. "What happened to me wasn't a training issue, it was a culture issue. You don't fix that in a PowerPoint." Silence. "I've been second-guessed my entire life," she continued, voice steady but full. "Because I'm young, because I'm black, because I don't dress like someone's idea of wealth, because I'm gay, people look at me and think I don't belong. And it's not just about hotels. It's in classrooms, offices, airports. What happened here is just one chapter in a book I've been living since I was a kid." The scoffed woman leaned forward. "So? What would you suggest we do differently?" "Start by believing people when they tell you they belong," Josephine said. "Don't wait until their last name makes you pay attention." Agnes finally spoke then, her voice low but sharp as a gavel. "My daughter doesn't need this hotel," she said. "Let's be clear about that. But if she's willing to help you learn how to respect guests who don't fit your assumptions, then you better listen. And they did. For the next hour, Josephine led a conversation that surprised even herself. She talked about microaggressions and systemic bias, yes, but also about being 16 and not invited to a friend's sleepover because the girl's mom didn't understand that lifestyle. About being at prom and hearing a whisper behind her that said, "She wore a suit." Figures. About every time she'd walked into a space and known that someone had already decided what kind of girl she was. The room was still when she finished. A few people looked shaken. A few looked ashamed. And that was good. Change, she'd learned, doesn't start with comfort. By the time they left the room, there were handshakes, thank yous, even an offer for Josephine to speak at a future hospitality conference. She and her mother declined the offer, but not the opportunity. Instead, they agreed to help build the hotel's new diversity advisory panel, with input from real guests and not just executives in suits. Outside, the lobby had transformed again. The front desk staff looked different. New faces, more inclusive uniforms. Melinda was gone. So was the assistant manager. But the most surprising part? A new plaque on the wall near the concierge desk. Josephine stopped and stared. The Caprice Commitment. Every guest is a name, not an assumption. In honor of Josephine Caprice, whose voice helped redefine our welcome. Agnes smiled beside her, proud but quiet. Josephine blinked a few times, biting the inside of her cheek. They're really doing it. They better, Agnes said, or they'll hear from me again. They laughed, the tension finally breaking. That evening, Josephine found herself back by the hotel's rooftop lounge, this time not to escape but to breathe. The sun was dipping low, casting honeyed gold across the skyline. She leaned against the balcony, sipping a drink Serena had made herself, a peach spritz with just enough citrus to keep it sharp. "You always make drinks this good for hotel guests?" Josephine asked, raising an eyebrow. Serena smirked. "Only the ones who start revolutions." They sat side by side, ankles brushing under the table. Josephine's rainbow pin caught the last of the sun, glinting like a wink. "So what happens now?" Serena asked. Josephine took a breath, long and slow. "Now, I go home. I finish finals. I send that paper on post-colonial fiction. I keep doing the work. And maybe go on a date?" Josephine looked over, surprised. "You?" she asked. Serena nodded. "I don't know," Josephine said, pretending to think. "I mean, you did offer me snacks." Serena laughed, reaching into her bag. "Boom, trail mix, premium kind, dark chocolate pieces." Josephine's eyes widened. Okay, you win." They sat together as the sky turned from gold to violet, the city buzzing far below. Josephine felt it then. Not the weight of proving herself, not the pressure of legacy, but something simpler, lighter. She felt seen. Later, as she packed her bag and zipped it shut, she glanced around the suite one last time. The room had stopped feeling like a battleground. It felt like hers. Like she hadn't just stayed here, she'd changed something here. Before she left, she took out a hotel notepad and scribbled her own message, folding it neatly and tucking it behind the desk lamp where only someone thoughtful would find it. "To the next guest who looks like me, you belong. Don't shrink to fit their comfort, make them expand to fit your truth." She smiled as she slipped out the door, her suitcase clicking gently behind her on the polished floors. And downstairs, the staff at the front desk smiled when they saw her, not out of fear, not out of performance, but like they were finally looking at her, not through her. Josephine Caprice walked out of the hotel like she owned it. Because in a way, she did.